Hello everybody, welcome along to this video, which is Mr. Johnson teaches Mrs. Birling a revision. A video which is part of a series of videos I'm putting together, quickly recapping all of the characters from the play for you, so you can try and get them straight in your mind, maybe exploring some key quotes, and particularly what these characters represent, which hopefully will then take you on to the higher marks. So as we watch this video, you'll need to be ready to pause it, to go back over some of the bits I'm going through maybe, in case it's too quick, but really importantly, make sure you've got pen and paper ready so you're making your own notes. Listening to a video will get you so far, writing your own notes is much more likely to push that information further into your mind and keep it there. And a quick reminder that this is part of your GCSE English Literature. The Inspector Calls questions will be found on paper 2, section A, so the first part of that second exam that you sit for literature. So let's get going then and have a look through the video. And let's start off then with, who is Mrs. Birling? So simply then, her first name is Sybil, so she is Sybil Birling. She's married to Arthur Birling, which is why she is called Mrs. Birling, and she's the mother to Eric and Sheila. She describes herself and is described as a prominent member, so an important member of the Brumley Women's Charity Organisation. And the key word there being charity, an organisation who's looking to support women in the town of Brumley, which is a made-up town in northern England. Now, importantly, she was the one who refused to give charity to Eva Smith, who she wasn't calling herself Eva Smith at that point, but the girl in the play. She was upset because this girl used the name Mrs. Birling. When asked her name, she said she was Mrs. Birling. The real Mrs. Birling wasn't pleased by this. So despite her being pregnant, this is the girl now, she was pregnant and she didn't want to take stolen money. Mrs. Birling used her influence to prevent the girl being given any support. And at the bottom there I've put, she firmly believes in obedience and respect towards superiors. She's very much sort of a believer in this class system, and that those who are less important need to show respect to those who are more important. So this is a quick recap of some of the things which she does throughout the play then. Starts the play here in her husband's speech. Is really pleased that Sheila's going to marry Gerald Croft, so that almost means that Sheila is then, she's almost sort of, the responsibility for looking after Sheila then shifts to Gerald, and she's almost done her part in bringing Sheila up. She goes off then. When the inspector arrives, she's not in the room. She's gone out with Sheila, so the men and the women separated after meals, formal meals. She's really disgusted by Eva being Gerald's mistress and the idea of having a mistress. She almost sort of rises above it and just can't believe that this sort of thing happens. And there's sort of several other instances of that when Gerald's talking. She's really rude to the inspector as well. She adopts this superior tone to him very often, feeling that she's much more important than him and questioning how he does things because she doesn't like the way it's happening. She reveals that she refused charity to Eva, as we talked about then, but then she discovers it was Eric who was going to be the father, so she almost refused charity to the girl who was going to give birth to her own grandchild. Finally, when the inspector leaves, she very quickly goes back to her former attitude, like her husband does. So with the question at the top of the screen there, does she change? The answer is, well, she does very, very temporarily. She sort of seems to have some regret, but then quickly switches back when they find out or believe that the inspector wasn't a real inspector. And then here's some key quotes. Again, quotes, there could be a whole number of other quotes and things that she says. For me, these are some of maybe the ones which really reveal the sort of character that she is. Like the top one, I consider that is a trifle impertinent inspector. The word impertinent comes up a few times. It almost means not showing respect to your superiors, to people more important than you. So she almost feels that the inspector isn't showing her the proper respect, and that's why the word impertinent comes up. It'll be a really useful word to remember and to be able to quote. So write it down and go and look up a definition after you've watched this video. She says, please don't contradict me like that. She often says that to Sheila as well, like how, don't question me, almost implying that she feels that she's more important and therefore people should just listen to her and take her word. Go and look for the father of the child. It's his responsibility, she says to the inspector. I think that's really key in the way she almost just pushes any responsibility back towards anyone who isn't her. Girls of that class, she's talking about Eva Smith then, that's a really revealing quote, revealing what she sort of believes about the class system and just sort of showing real prejudice towards sort of the lower classes, the working classes. I won't go through all of the other ones necessarily. It sort of shows a lack of regret and responsibility. The second to last one, maybe, again, real prejudice, as if a girl of that sort would ever refuse money, she says. And at the bottom there, just sort of talking about, again, the lack of respect she feels that the inspector showed her and that she was owed. So again, pause that screen. You could write down those quotes, look up other quotes by all means, and Adam, hopefully you might have a list of quotes somewhere already. What does she represent then? This is really key. Make sure you have it in your head that an inspector calls, the characters in there were created by J.B. Priestley to have a role. They have a function and a reason for being there. And so Mrs Birling then, I've got a picture there for sort of what I might consider a typical Edwardian woman. The Edwardian era was that which was around in 1912. She's very much upper class, as I put there, and I've quoted from the stage directions at the beginning of the play. She's described as her husband's social superior. So she's almost, her background is one of sort of real importance. She has been born into money, as they say, and has always sort of had money and has had this upbringing, which makes her very much superior. Then I've put there a keyword, she's the archetypal, almost like the real representation of. She really does capture what it is to be a rich, wealthy wife at this time. Sort of following society's expectations of her, she behaves and acts as society would expect a woman in her role to act. She certainly represents greed, and particularly prejudice is a key word. To prejudice is to prejudge somebody. And she very much is sort of very prejudiced towards sort of when she says girls of that class particularly. I think that certainly represents her. Also the superiority that she shows as well, and just sort of really sort of shows that idea of like the upper classes sort of feeling they are much more important than the lower classes. Also in the stage directions, I've just looked them up here as well, she's described as rather cold woman, and that certainly sort of shows that lack of emotion and that lack of sort of empathy towards other human beings. Maybe these are just some of the themes that you might be able to link her with. These are themes which run throughout the play. Certainly power, prejudice, there it is again, but also the views of the older generation who are very much stuck in their ways and stuck in their beliefs. That certainly comes through in contrast with the younger generation represented by Sheila and Eric. I mean, I'm not going to read through all of those, but I certainly think that's worth pausing, and you could link her with some of those and explore some of those ideas. My question would be to you, can you go back through the play? Can you identify any quotes which would link to those themes? That's really important, is being able to look at a theme like that and be able to go, right, I know that the quote, girls of that class, could link to prejudice. It could link to power in some ways because it makes her seem like she's more powerful than them. Certainly links to class. It links to the idea of money as well, because she has got money and she's looking down on those who haven't. It's how you can twist the quotes that you know to fit the themes. Excuse me a second. Possible exam questions. Now the first two there are actual exam questions. The first one names Mrs Birling when it says, how far does Priestley present Mrs Birling as an unlikable character? So then you could explore, does she change? Is she completely unlikable? And I think the answer is most likely yes, but what evidence have you got of that? You don't always have to use quotes from what she says. You can use what other characters say, but also you could sort of things that she does as well. You don't always have to use quotes, although quotes will allow you to then analyse words from the quotes. The second one there is an actual exam question. So the first one was from 2017. The next one there is 2019. How does Priestley present selfishness and its effects? So Mrs Birling isn't named there, but what you could do is then link her directly to that question. You could then also contrast it with Sheila and how Sheila looks at how she was selfish but then changes, how Mrs Birling was selfish and doesn't change. So actually it's up to you to try and link characters to questions where characters aren't always named. The bottom two there are ones I have made up. Using Mrs Birling to explore effects of prejudice. Absolutely, prejudice could come up. I'd be surprised because it's quite a high level word, but it's not necessarily out of the question that might have come up. And also the importance of change I've put there as well. And actually you might go, well, she doesn't change. And sometimes questions like that want you to understand that no, they don't change, and that's what it's asking you. So it won't always say how characters don't change. It might need you to make a leap between the importance of change and going, right, Mrs Birling doesn't change. So those are suggestions that you could maybe have a practice of having a go at writing a response to those ones. Time yourself, put you in those exam conditions. The more you do that, the more prepared you're going to be. And finally, here are some quick recap questions for you to pause just to see how much you've understood this video and understood the character of Mrs Birling. This is where I'm going to end. I'm trying to keep these videos roughly to 10 minutes. Do check out the other videos on my channels across all different areas of English, but also particularly then with Inspector Calls if that's what you're revising. Make sure you know the characters, make sure you've got some key quotes and some key moments for those characters, and do check out all the other videos as I said on my channel. So thanks very much for watching everybody, and I wish you the very best of luck when it comes to your exams. Thank you and goodbye.